Lisa Morgan stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the metal deck of Crossroads Station. The massive space station hung in the void between three different star systems. It was built for moments like this when different species needed to meet on neutral ground. Lisa carried her diplomatic case in one hand and smoothed her dark blue suit with the other. She had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. The station corridors buzzed with activity. Human technicians worked alongside maintenance robots, while security guards from all three species patrolled the halls. Lisa walked toward the main conference center with steady steps. Her black hair was pulled back in a neat style, and her face showed the calm confidence of someone who had handled difficult negotiations before. Captain Helen Davis waited near the docking bay. She commanded the human diplomatic vessel Harmony that had brought Lisa to this meeting. Helen was a career Navy officer with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "The Elven delegation arrived 2 hours ago," Helen told Lisa as they walked together. "The Vorthak showed up just after you did. Both sides seem ready to talk, but there's tension in the air." Lisa nodded. She had studied both species for months. The elves called themselves the Silvani Confederation. They were tall and graceful with pointed ears and silver hair. Their ships looked like works of art with flowing curves and crystal panels. The elves valued honor and tradition above all else. They had ruled parts of the galaxy for thousands of years. The Vorthak Empire was different. They were shorter than humans, but built like solid blocks of muscle. Their skin was gray and their eyes were yellow. Vorthak ships looked like flying weapons covered in armor and bristling with guns. They believed that strength was the only thing that mattered in the universe. For the past 50 years, these two powers had been moving toward war. Border disputes had turned into raids. Raids had become battles. Now both sides were building massive fleets, and the entire galaxy watched nervously. Smaller species like humanity could get crushed if a full war broke out. That was why Lisa was here. The human government had offered to help broker peace talks. Both sides had agreed to meet at Crossroads Station. Lisa's job was to find common ground and prevent a war that would destroy millions of lives. The conference room was large and round with a dome ceiling that showed the stars outside. 3 curved tables faced each other in the center. Lisa took her place at the human table and activated her translation device. Within minutes, the other delegations entered. Zarathiel led the elven group. She moved like water flowing over stone with grace that made Lisa feel clumsy by comparison. Her silver hair fell to her shoulders, and her violet eyes seemed to see everything at once. She wore robes of deep green that shimmered when she moved. Other elves followed behind her, but she was clearly in charge. The Vorthak delegation stomped into the room like they were marching to battle. Kethara was their leader, and she looked like she could tear apart a starship with her bare hands. Scars covered her gray arms, and her yellow eyes burned with intensity. She wore military armor, even to a peace conference. Her soldiers took positions around the room as if expecting an attack. "Welcome," Lisa said in a clear voice. "I am Lisa Morgan, representing the Human Federation. We are here as neutral mediators to help find a path to peace between your peoples." Zarathiel inclined her head slightly. "The Silvani Confederation honors this meeting. We come seeking justice for the wrongs done to our people." Kethara slammed her fist on the table. "The Vorthak Empire seeks nothing but the truth. Your people attacked our mining ships first." "That is a lie," Zarathiel replied with ice in her voice. "Your ships violated our sacred worlds." Lisa raised her hand before the argument could escalate. "Let us start with facts that both sides can agree on. Border tensions have increased over the past decade. Both sides have suffered losses. The question is how we move forward." For the next several hours, Lisa worked to keep the discussions civil. She asked careful questions and listened to complaints from both sides. The elves claimed the Vorthak were destroying ancient sites that held spiritual meaning. The Vorthak said the elves were blocking access to valuable mining areas with religious claims. Amy Collins sat beside Lisa taking notes on everything. Amy was young but sharp with red hair and green eyes that showed how closely she was following every word. She had graduated from the Diplomatic Academy just 2 years ago, but Lisa trusted her judgment. During a break, Amy whispered to Lisa, "Both sides want the same thing. They want respect, and they want security. The problem is they see each other as threats." Lisa nodded. Amy was right, but finding a solution would not be easy. The Vorthak saw the universe in terms of strength and weakness. The elves saw it in terms of honor and tradition. Humans fell somewhere in the middle, which was why they could serve as mediators. As the day continued, Lisa began to see small signs of progress. When she asked Zarathiel about Elven history, the Vorthak commander listened with interest instead of boredom. When Cathara explained Vorthak mining techniques, Zarathiel asked thoughtful questions instead of dismissing them. By evening, all three groups were tired, but Lisa felt hopeful. Real communication was starting to happen. Both sides were beginning to see each other as people instead of enemies. Tomorrow we will discuss specific border issues, Lisa announced. I suggest we all rest and approach these problems with fresh minds. As the delegations filed out, Lisa stayed behind to review her notes. Amy gathered the recording devices and data pads they had used during the talks. Do you think this will work? Amy asked. Lisa looked up at the dome ceiling where stars glittered in the darkness. Both sides came here because they want to avoid war. That gives us something to work with. If we can find the right compromise, everyone might walk away satisfied. What Lisa did not know was that outside the station, Vorthak ships were moving into hidden positions. Energy readings that looked like background radiation were actually cloaking devices hiding a massive fleet. Cathara had not come to Crossroads to make peace. She had come to end the war before it began, by destroying both human and elven leadership in one perfect strike. But for now, Lisa felt optimistic as she walked back to her quarters. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she believed that patient diplomacy could solve almost any problem. She had faith that reasonable people could always find a way to avoid violence. She was about to learn how wrong she could be. The second day of negotiations began with hope in the air. Lisa arrived at the conference room early and found Zarathiel already there reviewing documents on a crystal tablet. The elven ambassador looked up and gave Lisa a slight smile. Good morning, Lisa Morgan. I have been thinking about yesterday's discussions. Perhaps there are ways our peoples can share the disputed territories. Lisa felt encouraged. That sounds promising. What did you have in mind? Before Zarathiel could answer, the doors burst open and Cathara marched in with her full delegation. The Vorthak commander looked different today. Her yellow eyes gleamed with something that might have been excitement, and she moved with the confidence of someone who held all the cards in a game. Are we ready to begin? Cathara asked as she took her seat. Her voice carried an edge that had not been there the day before. Lisa activated the recording system and opened her notes. Yesterday we established that both sides want security and respect. Today I would like to focus on the 3 border systems where most conflicts have occurred. She displayed a holographic star map in the center of the room. 3 solar systems appeared in blue light showing planets and asteroid fields where Vorthak and Elven forces had clashed over the past years. The Kepler system has valuable mining deposits, Lisa began. The Arcturus system contains what the elves consider sacred sites. The Nova system sits between them and could serve as a buffer zone. Zarathiel leaned forward to study the map. The ancient sites in Arcturus cannot be disturbed. They contain the tombs of our greatest leaders from before your species learned to walk upright. Cathara snorted. Your dead kings matter less than the living workers who need those minerals. The Vorthak Empire has millions of people to feed and protect. Lisa raised her hand. Let's explore compromise. What if mining operations in Arcturus were limited to areas away from the burial sites? And what if the elves received a share of the profits in exchange for access? For a moment, both sides seemed to consider the idea. Then alarms started blaring throughout the station. Red warning lights flashed and an automated voice announced emergency protocols. Lisa looked up in confusion as the peaceful atmosphere shattered. What is happening? Zarathiel demanded. Cathara stood up slowly and Lisa saw something terrible in the Vorthak commander's expression. It was satisfaction mixed with predatory hunger, like a hunter who had cornered her prey. The Vorthak Empire is happening, Cathara said with a cold smile. The main display screen flickered to life, showing the space around Crossroads Station. What Lisa saw made her blood freeze. Dozens of Vorthak warships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the station like sharks circling wounded prey. Their weapons were already charging, and Lisa could see more ships materializing as cloaking devices shut down. Captain Helen Davis's voice crackled over the communication system. "Diplomatic team, this is the Harmony. We are under attack. Repeat, we are under attack. Multiple Vorthak vessels have opened fire on our position." Through the dome ceiling, Lisa could see bright flashes of weapon fire. The human diplomatic ship Harmony was fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers as missiles found their targets. "You planned this," Zarathiel whispered in horror. Her violet eyes went wide as the truth hit her. "This was never meant to be a peace conference." Kethara laughed, and it was an ugly sound. "Did you really think the mighty Vorthak Empire would beg for scraps at a negotiating table? We came here to end this war before it truly began. With both human and elven leadership destroyed in one strike, the galaxy will understand that we cannot be stopped." Amy Collins grabbed Lisa's arm. "We need to get out of here now!" Before anyone could move, the conference room doors slammed shut and locked. Vorthak soldiers in full combat armor poured through hidden passages that Lisa had not even known existed. Their weapons were raised and ready to fire. "Nobody moves," the lead soldier barked. "You are all prisoners of the Vorthak Empire." Lisa's mind raced as she tried to process what was happening. The peace talks had been a trap from the beginning. Kethara had used the negotiations as cover to position a massive fleet for a surprise attack. Now she planned to eliminate key leaders from both species while their military forces were scattered and unprepared. "The station's defenses are down," one of the Vorthak soldiers reported. "Boarding parties have secured the main areas. Some security teams are still fighting in the lower levels." Through the ceiling dome, Lisa watched the battle raging outside. Several elven escort ships had joined the fight, but they were badly outnumbered. Their elegant, curved hulls were taking terrible damage from Vorthak weapons. One elven ship exploded. In a brilliant flash that lit up the conference room, Zarathiel made a sound of pain as she watched her people die. "Those ships carried some of our finest warriors. They came here trusting in the promise of safe passage." "Trust is weakness," Kethara replied without emotion. "The strong take what they need, and the weak serve or perish. This is the natural order of the universe." More explosions shook the station as Vorthak forces breached the outer hull in multiple locations. Lisa could hear weapon fire echoing through the corridors outside. Emergency systems struggled to maintain life support. As hull breaches vented atmosphere into space, Amy was pale but trying to stay calm. "How many ships do they have out there?" "Enough," Kethara said. 3 full battle fleets with support vessels. We have been planning this operation for months. Your precious Harmony and the elven escorts never had a chance." Lisa felt sick as she realized how completely they had been outmaneuvered. While she had been focused on finding diplomatic solutions, Kethara had been setting up what amounted to an execution. The Vorthak commander had sat through hours of negotiations, knowing that she planned to murder everyone in the room. The other delegations, Lisa said. "The trade representatives and observers from neutral species. You're going to kill them too? Witnesses must be eliminated," Kethara replied matter-of-factly. "When word reaches their home worlds, the message will be clear. The Vorthak Empire is not to be opposed." Another massive explosion rocked the station. Through the communication system, Lisa could hear Captain Helen Davis coordinating desperate damage control efforts aboard the Harmony. The human ship was still fighting, but Lisa could tell from Helen's voice that they were losing badly. Zarathiel suddenly moved faster than Lisa thought possible. The elven ambassador rolled behind an overturned table and came up with a small weapon that had been hidden in her robes. She fired twice before the Vorthak soldiers could react. "Get down!" Zarathiel shouted to Lisa and Amy. Energy bolts flew across the room as a firefight erupted. Zarathiel moved with fluid grace, dodging between tables and chairs. Lisa realized that the elegant ambassador was also a trained warrior who knew how to handle herself in combat. "The elf has military training," Kethara growled to her soldiers. "Take her alive if possible, but do not let her escape." Lisa grabbed Amy and pulled her behind the conference table as weapon fire scorched the air above their heads. The situation had gone from diplomatic crisis to life and death struggle in a matter of minutes. "Stay low," Lisa told Amy. "We need to find another way out of here." But as Lisa looked around the room, she realized there might not be anywhere to run. The Vorthak had planned this perfectly. They controlled the station and the space around it. Even if Lisa and the others could escape the conference room, where would they go? Outside, the battle continued to rage. The Harmony was still fighting. But Lisa could see that Captain Helen Davis was running out of options. Soon the human ship would be destroyed, and with it, any hope of rescue. Cathara stood in the center of the chaos with her arms crossed, watching the firefight like it was entertainment. This is what happens when inferior species try to interfere with Vorthak destiny. Your diplomacy is useless against superior firepower. Lisa pressed herself against the floor as another energy bolt burned the air inches from her head. She had spent her career believing that any conflict could be resolved through patient negotiation and careful compromise. Now she was learning that some people simply could not be reasoned with. The betrayal cut deeper than the immediate danger. Cathara had sat across from them for hours discussing peace while planning mass murder. She had listened to their hopes and concerns while calculating how best to destroy them. As weapon fire continued to light up the room, Lisa realized that everything she thought she knew about conflict resolution was about to be tested in the most brutal way possible. The firefight in the conference room continued for several tense minutes. Zarathiel moved like liquid shadow between the overturned tables, using her small weapon with deadly precision. 2 Vorthak soldiers were already down, but more kept pouring through the sealed doors. Lisa stayed low beside Amy, watching the battle unfold above their heads. Energy bolts scorched the air and left burning marks on the walls. The Vorthak soldiers were well trained, but they seemed surprised by how effectively the elven ambassador was fighting back. "She is just one elf!" Cathara snarled at her troops. "Overwhelm her position and end this." The Vorthak commander was growing frustrated. Her perfect trap was not going according to plan. She had expected quick surrender, not a running battle in the conference room itself. Zarathiel took cover behind a thick metal pillar as more soldiers advanced on her position. Her violet eyes met Lisa's across the room, and Lisa could see that the elven ambassador was calculating odds that did not look good. "I cannot hold them much longer," Zarathiel called out. "They have too many fighters." Amy grabbed Lisa's arm. "We have to do something. They're going to kill us all." Lisa looked around desperately for anything that might help. The conference room had been designed for peaceful meetings, not combat. There were no weapons or defensive systems that she could see, just furniture and communication equipment. Then something changed inside Lisa's mind. It was like a switch being flipped, or a door being opened that had been locked for years. The careful diplomatic mask that she wore began to crack, and underneath, something much more dangerous started to show through. Lisa studied the room again, but this time she saw it differently. The communication console could be rewired to overload and create a distraction. The metal table legs could be broken off and used as weapons. The ventilation grates near the ceiling provided access to maintenance tunnels. Most importantly, she noticed that the Vorthak soldiers were making basic tactical errors. They were bunched too close together, making them vulnerable to area attacks. Their formation left blind spots that could be exploited. Their heavy armor slowed them down in the confined space. "Amy," Lisa said quietly, "when I give the signal, I want you to crawl toward that ventilation grate in the corner. Can you do that?" Amy nodded nervously. "What are you going to do?" Lisa did not answer because she was not entirely sure herself. Old memories were surfacing, memories she had tried, very hard to bury. Training that had been drilled into her until it became instinct, skills that she had sworn never to use again. For 3 years, Lisa had been a career diplomat who believed in peaceful solutions, but before that, she had been Major Lisa Morgan of the Human Federation's Special Forces. She had been a soldier who specialized in impossible missions and asymmetric warfare. The transformation was gradual at first. Lisa's posture changed as she shifted from defensive crouch to predatory stance. Her breathing became controlled and steady. Her eyes began tracking the movement patterns of the Vorthak soldiers with professional interest. Zarathiel was running, low on ammunition, and the Vorthak were closing in on her position. One soldier moved too far from his squad, trying to flank the elven ambassador. Lisa saw the opportunity, and her old training took over. She moved fast and silent, coming up behind the isolated soldier. Her hand found the pressure point on his neck that would drop him unconscious in seconds. As he fell, Lisa caught his weapon and rolled behind another table. "What the hell?" Cathara shouted. "Where did that come from?" The other Vorthak soldiers spun around looking for this new threat. In their confusion, Zarathiel managed to take down another fighter with a precise shot. The tactical situation in the room was suddenly much more fluid. Lisa checked the captured weapon and found it was similar to human military rifles she had used before. Muscle memory guided her hands as she configured the settings and checked the power cell. Everything felt familiar despite the alien design. "Amy now!" Lisa hissed. Amy scrambled toward the ventilation grate while the Vorthak soldiers were focused on finding Lisa's new position. Lisa provided covering fire with short controlled bursts that forced the enemy to keep their heads down. The weapon felt good in her hands. It had been 3 years since Lisa had held a military rifle, but the skills came flooding back. Stance, breathing, sight alignment, trigger control. All the lessons that had been beaten into her during Special Forces training. She was no longer Lisa Morgan the diplomat. She was Major Morgan the soldier, and she was very good at her job. "Zarathiel," Lisa called out. "Can you reach the communication console?" The elven ambassador looked confused by the sudden change in Lisa's voice and manner. "I think so." "What do you need me to do?" "Overload the main power coupling. It will cause a feedback surge through the station's electrical grid." Zarathiel's eyes widened. "How do you know about electrical systems?" Lisa did not have time to explain. She laid down suppressing fire while Zarathiel dashed to the communication console. The elven ambassador's fingers moved quickly over the controls following Lisa's instructions. Meanwhile, Amy had reached the ventilation grate and was working to remove the cover. The young aide was frightened, but following orders like a good soldier. Lisa felt a stab of guilt for dragging Amy into combat, but there was no choice now. "Feedback cascade initiated," Zarathiel reported. "Power fluctuations will begin in 30 seconds. Lisa smiled grimly. In 30 seconds, the lights would go out and emergency power would kick in. In the confusion that followed, she would have a chance to even the odds further. Cathara was shouting orders to her troops, but she sounded rattled. The human diplomat, who had seemed so helpless, was suddenly fighting like a trained commando. The Vorthak commander did not understand what had changed. "Who are you, really?" Cathara demanded across the room. Lisa moved to a new position before answering. "I am someone who believed that words were stronger than weapons. You just proved me wrong." The lights went out, and emergency power bathed everything in red. Lisa had been ready for the change, but the Vorthak soldiers were caught off guard. She used night vision techniques to move through the darkness while they fumbled with their equipment. 3 quick shots took down 3 more soldiers. Lisa was using the confusion to systematically reduce their numbers. Each target was selected carefully to maximize tactical advantage while minimizing risk to Amy and Zarathiel. "Impossible," Cathara growled. "You are a diplomat, not a warrior." "I used to be a warrior," Lisa replied from the shadows. "I retired because I got tired of killing people, but some people only understand violence." In the red emergency lighting, Lisa looked like something from a nightmare. Her business suit was torn and dirty, but she moved with lethal grace through the ruined conference room. The careful diplomatic persona was completely gone, replaced by someone much more dangerous. Amy had gotten the ventilation grate open and was climbing inside the maintenance tunnel. Zarathiel was covering her escape route while engaging the remaining Vorthak soldiers. The elven ambassador fought with flowing precision, but Lisa could see she was impressed by the human's sudden transformation. "The station has security teams," Lisa told Zarathiel. "If we can reach them, we can coordinate a proper resistance. But first they had to get out of the conference room alive." Cathara still had soldiers between them and the exits. The Vorthak commander herself was armed and dangerous. Lisa had the skills to fight her way out, but it would require using abilities she had hoped never to need again. Outside, the battle continued to rage as Vorthak forces tried to complete their takeover of Crossroads Station. Captain Helen Davis and the crew of the Harmony were still fighting, but Lisa knew they needed help fast. The peaceful diplomat was gone. In her place stood a soldier who understood that sometimes the only way to save lives was to take them. Lisa. Morgan was about to show the Vorthak Empire what humans were capable of when they stopped trying to be civilized. Lisa moved through the maintenance tunnels with Amy close behind her. The young aide was breathing hard, but keeping up as they crawled through the narrow passages that ran between the station's walls. Behind them, they could hear Zarathiel engaging. The remaining Vorthak soldiers in the conference room. Where are we going? Amy whispered. Security center, Lisa replied without looking back. If any station personnel are still fighting, that's where they'll coordinate from. The maintenance tunnels were dark and cramped, but Lisa navigated them like she had studied the blueprints for years. In reality, she was reading the situation based on standard station design principles she had learned during military briefings. Most space installations followed similar patterns for practical reasons. They emerged through a service hatch into a corridor that was flickering between normal and emergency lighting. Smoke drifted through the air, and Lisa could smell the sharp odor of burned electronics. The Vorthak boarding parties had done significant damage to the station's systems. Lisa checked both directions, then motioned for Amy to follow. They moved quickly but quietly toward the central hub where the security center would be located. Along the way, Lisa gathered intelligence on Vorthak positions and tactics. They're spreading their forces too thin, Lisa observed. Cathara is trying to control the entire station with maybe 200 soldiers. That's not enough for effective occupation. Amy looked at her with new eyes. You really were military, weren't you? Lisa nodded. Special forces. I spent 5 years running operations behind enemy lines. This isn't my first time being outnumbered and outgunned. They reached a junction where 3 corridors met, and Lisa held up her hand for silence. Voices echoed from around the corner, speaking in the harsh Vorthak language. Lisa listened carefully, trying to determine how many enemies were nearby. 4 soldiers, she whispered to Amy. Stay here and keep watch. Before Amy could protest, Lisa was moving. She came around the corner low and fast, taking the first Vorthak soldier down with a silent strike to the neck. The second soldier turned toward the sound, but Lisa was already inside his guard. The third and fourth soldiers managed to raise their weapons, but Lisa used the second soldier's body as a shield while she closed distance. Her captured rifle fired twice, and both enemies dropped without getting off a shot. Amy stared in shock as Lisa dragged the bodies out of sight. How did you do that? Training, Lisa said simply. And the Vorthak are overconfident. They expect humans to be weak, so they're not being careful enough. They continued toward the security center, encountering 2 more Vorthak patrols along the way. Each time, Lisa eliminated the enemies quickly and quietly, using techniques that Amy had never seen before. The Diplomat, who had seemed so civilized, was revealing herself to be an extremely dangerous fighter. The security center was under siege when they arrived. A dozen human and alien security guards had barricaded themselves inside, while Vorthak soldiers tried to break down the reinforced doors. Energy weapon fire lit up the corridor as both sides exchanged shots. Lisa studied the tactical situation. The Vorthak had superior numbers and firepower, but they were attacking a prepared position. They were also bunched together in the corridor, making them vulnerable to flanking attacks. I'm going to hit them from behind, Lisa told Amy. When the shooting starts, I want you to signal the security team. Tell them help is coming. Amy nodded nervously. Be careful, Lisa smiled grimly. Careful is for diplomats. I'm a soldier now. She worked her way around behind the Vorthak assault team using maintenance passages and service corridors. The enemy soldiers were focused on the security center and not watching their backs. Lisa positioned herself for maximum advantage, then opened fire. The first burst caught 3 Vorthak soldiers completely by surprise. As they turned to face this new threat, the security team inside the center realized what was happening and increased their own fire rate. The Vorthak found themselves caught between 2 groups of enemies. Lisa moved aggressively, pressing her attack, while the enemy was confused and off balance. She used cover effectively and changed positions frequently, making it difficult for the Vorthak to target her. Within minutes, the corridor was littered with enemy bodies. The security center doors opened, and guards poured out to secure the area. Their leader was a grizzled human sergeant named Kate Phillips, who looked like she had been in more than her share of fights. Who the hell are you? Kate demanded. Lisa Morgan. I was here for the peace talks. Kate stared at her. You're the diplomat? You fight like special forces. I used to be special forces. Right now, I need to know what's happening with station defenses. Kate led them into the security center where multiple screens showed the ongoing battle. The situation was bad, but not hopeless. Vorthak forces controlled about 60% of the station, but pockets of resistance were holding out in key areas. The main reactor is still under our control, Kate reported. So are the docking bays and the communication array, but they've got the command center and most of the residential sections. Lisa studied the tactical displays. Her military mind automatically began formulating a counterattack plan. The Vorthak were strong, but they had made several strategic errors. That could be exploited. They're overextended, Lisa said. Cathara divided her forces to grab as much territory as possible. That means each Vorthak position is relatively weak. Amy had been monitoring communications, and she looked up with alarm. The Harmony is in serious trouble. Captain Davis says they can't hold out much longer. Through the security center's main window, Lisa could see the battle raging in space around the station. The human diplomatic ship was fighting desperately against overwhelming odds. Several Elven escort vessels were still in the fight, but they were taking heavy damage. We need to coordinate with the ship, Lisa decided. If we can take out the station's weapons array, it will reduce the pressure on our forces outside. Kate nodded. The weapons control center is 3 levels up in the central tower, but it's heavily defended. Then we'll have to be creative about how we approach it. Lisa began outlining a plan that would use the station's own systems against the Vorthak occupiers. She knew that Cathara expected humans to fight conventionally, but Lisa had been trained in asymmetric warfare. Sometimes the best way to win a battle was to change the rules. First, we need to contact Zarathiel, Lisa said. If she's still alive, she can provide intelligence on Vorthak tactics and help coordinate our attacks. As if summoned by her words, Zarathiel's voice came over the communication system. Security Center, this is Zarathiel. I have escaped the conference room, and I am moving toward your position. Lisa smiled. The Elven ambassador was proving to be much more resourceful than anyone had expected. Zarathiel, this is Lisa. What's your status? I am injured but mobile. The Vorthak think I am trapped in the lower levels, but I know these station layouts better than they realize. Can you reach the Environmental Control Center? There was a pause. Yes, but it will be dangerous. Why do you ask? Lisa's smile turned predatory. Because I have an idea that Cathara isn't going to like very much. Over the next hour, Lisa coordinated a series of strikes against Vorthak positions throughout the station. She used her knowledge of special operations tactics, while Zarathiel provided information about Vorthak weaknesses that she had observed during the negotiations. The Elven ambassador turned out to be much more than a diplomat herself. She moved through the station like a ghost, striking at enemy patrols and disappearing before they could respond. Her people had not survived thousands of years in a hostile galaxy by being weak. Environmental controls are compromised, Zarathiel reported. I can now regulate atmosphere and gravity in any section of the station. Perfect, Lisa replied. Kate, are your people ready for Phase 2? The security sergeant grinned. We've been ready since this started. Just tell us where to hit them. Lisa looked at the tactical display one more time. The Vorthak had come to Crossroads expecting easy prey. Instead, they were about to learn that humans and elves could be very dangerous when they worked together. All units prepare for coordinated assault, Lisa announced. Let's show Cathara what happens when you underestimate your enemies. The counterattack was about to begin, and Lisa felt the familiar rush of combat operations. She had tried to leave this life behind, but circumstances had forced her back into it. Now she was going to make the Vorthak pay for their betrayal in the most professional way possible. The coordinated assault began at exactly midnight station time. Lisa had timed the attack to coincide with a shift change in the Vorthak patrol schedule that Zarathiel had observed. For 30 minutes, the enemy would be slightly disorganized. As new guards took their positions, Zarathiel struck first using environmental controls to flood several Vorthak positions with sleeping gas. Enemy soldiers collapsed at their posts, while their backup teams rushed to investigate. This drew reinforcements away from key targets that Lisa's security teams could then attack with superior numbers. Phase 1 complete, Kate reported from the security center. We've retaken the medical bay and 2 docking ports. Lisa was leading a strike team toward the weapons control center in the station's central tower. Amy stayed close behind her while 6 security guards provided backup. They moved through maintenance corridors, avoiding the main passages where Vorthak patrols might spot them. Gravity flux in Section 7, Zarathiel announced over the communication system. Enemy reinforcements are floating helplessly. Lisa smiled as she imagined Vorthak soldiers struggling in zero gravity while trying to maintain their positions. Cathara's forces were discovering that controlling a space station required more than just superior firepower. It required understanding the environment itself. They reached the base of the central tower where the weapons array was controlled. Two Vorthak guards stood watch, but they were looking outward for threats, not upward, where Lisa's team was approaching through service shafts. Lisa dropped down behind the first guard and rendered him unconscious before he could raise an alarm. The second guard turned toward the sound, but Amy had emerged from another shaft and hit him with a stun weapon borrowed from station security. "Nice work," Lisa told her. "You're getting good at this." Amy looked proud despite the dangerous situation. "I had a good teacher." They climbed the tower using emergency ladders and maintenance lifts. Twice they encountered Vorthak patrols, but Lisa dealt with them quickly and quietly. Her Special Forces training was coming back in full as muscle memory guided her movements. The Weapons Control Center was heavily defended with 8 Vorthak soldiers and automated defense systems. Lisa studied the setup through a ventilation grate and realized that a direct assault would be costly and probably unsuccessful. "We need a distraction," she told her team. "Something big enough to draw most of them away." As if reading her mind, Zarathiel's voice came over the communication system. "Lisa, I am in position near the main power coupling for that section. I can create a power surge that will look like a critical system failure." "Do it," Lisa replied. "We'll move when they respond to the emergency." Moments later, alarms began, blaring in the Weapons Control Center. Emergency lights flashed and automated systems announced a cascading power failure in the tower's main grid. 6 of the 8 Vorthak guards immediately left to investigate, leaving only 2 to watch the critical weapons controls. Lisa's team moved fast through the now lightly defended position. The remaining guards went down quickly, and Lisa found herself standing in front of the station's main weapons console. Her fingers moved over the controls as she began shutting down the external gun arrays. "Weapons offline," she announced. "The pressure is off our ships outside." Through the control centers, windows, Lisa could see the immediate effect. The Harmony and the surviving Elven ships began pressing their attack against the Vorthak fleet, now that the station's guns were silent. Captain Helen Davis's voice came over the communication system, sounding relieved. "Unknown ally. This is the Harmony. Thanks for the assist. We're moving to support your position." But Lisa knew the battle was far from over. Keth Ara would realize what was happening and concentrate her remaining forces to retake the weapons center. They needed to hold this position until reinforcements could arrive. "Set up defensive positions," Lisa ordered her team. "They'll be coming hard and fast." She was right. Within minutes, the tower shook as Vorthak soldiers blasted their way through the lower levels. Heavy footsteps echoed in the stairwells as enemy forces climbed toward the weapons center. Lisa counted at least 20 attackers based on the sound. "Contact front," one of the security guards called out as the first Vorthak soldiers appeared at the main entrance. The firefight that followed was intense but brief. Lisa's team held the high ground and knew exactly where the enemy would have to approach. They had prepared defensive positions and coordinated their fire effectively. The Vorthak assault broke against their positions like waves against a seawall. But Lisa knew Keth Ara would not give up that easily. The Vorthak commander was probably regrouping for a larger assault with heavier weapons. They needed to end this quickly before the enemy could overwhelm them through sheer numbers. "Amy," Lisa said, "can you operate the weapons console?" The young aide nodded. "I think so. What do you want me to do?" "Target the Vorthak command ship. The big one with all the extra armor. If we can take out their flagship, it might break their morale." Amy's fingers moved over the alien controls as she tried to understand the targeting system. Meanwhile, Lisa and the security team prepared for the next Vorthak assault. She could hear Kethara's voice echoing up the stairwell as the commander personally led her troops toward the weapons center. "Got it," Amy announced. "Weapons charged and locked on target." "Fire!" Lisa ordered. The station's main gun array came back online under Amy's control, but instead of targeting the human and elven ships, it focused on the Vorthak flagship. Massive energy beams lanced out and struck the enemy command vessel. Its shields flared and failed under the concentrated bombardment. "Direct hit," Amy reported. "The flagship is breaking apart." Through the windows, Lisa watched the Vorthak command ship explode in a brilliant flash. The destruction of their flagship sent shockwaves through the enemy fleet. Several smaller ships immediately began retreating while others seemed confused and directionless. That was when Kethara herself burst into the weapons control center with her remaining soldiers. The Vorthak commander's yellow eyes burned with rage as she saw her carefully planned operation falling apart around her. "You!" Cathara snarled as she spotted Lisa. "You did this! You are just a diplomat, but you fight like you were born for war!" Lisa faced the alien commander with steady eyes. "I was born for war, but I chose peace. You forced me to remember what I really am." The two women circled each other while their respective soldiers maintained an uneasy standoff. This had become personal between them. Cathara represented everything. Lisa had tried to leave behind, while Lisa represented a threat to everything Cathara believed about human weakness. "Your species talks about diplomacy and cooperation," Cathara said. "But underneath you are predators just like us. At least the Vorthak are honest about what we are." "We are what we choose to be," Lisa replied. "You chose conquest and betrayal. I chose to try for something better. But when you threatened innocent lives, you left me no choice." They fought with weapons first, then hand-to-hand when their guns were empty. Cathara was physically stronger, but Lisa was faster and more skilled. The battle ranged across the control center as both women used every technique they knew. In the end, Lisa's training and experience won out. She managed to pin Cathara in a submission hold that left the Vorthak commander helpless, but alive. "Surrender," Lisa demanded. "Order your remaining forces to stand down." Cathara looked up at her with something that might have been respect. "You could have killed me. Why did you not?" "Because killing you won't solve anything. The Vorthak Empire needs to understand that strength without wisdom leads to defeat. Maybe you can teach them that lesson." Slowly, Cathara gave the order for her forces to surrender. The battle for Crossroads Station was over, but Lisa knew the real work was just beginning. 3 species would need to find a way to coexist, and that would require the kind of patience and understanding that only came through genuine diplomacy. Zarathiel arrived at the weapons center as the last Vorthak soldiers laid down their arms. The elven ambassador looked at Lisa with new eyes. "You are not what you appear to be," Zarathiel observed. "None of us are," Lisa replied. "The question is what we choose to become." Over the following days, Lisa worked to establish genuine peace talks between the 3 species. This time, there would be no deception or hidden agendas. The Vorthak had learned that humans could be dangerous when threatened. The elves had learned that humans could be trusted when their word was given. Most importantly, Lisa had learned something about herself. She had tried to abandon her military background, but it would always be part of who she was. The key was using those skills in service of peace rather than conquest. The new treaty that emerged from these negotiations would last for decades. It established trade agreements and mutual defense pacts that benefited all 3 species. But more than that, it created understanding between peoples who had once seen each other as enemies. Lisa returned to diplomatic service, but with a new perspective. Sometimes the greatest act of diplomacy was knowing when to stop talking and start fighting. But the goal was always to create a world where fighting would no longer be necessary. She had been built for war, but she chose to forge peace. That choice made all the difference.